No, not yet. And then I am going to turn things over to our intrepid leader, Brian, who is coming to us from CIS, and he'll give us a little bit of background on what he does and what makes him the man of the hour for disseminating this information about all things technology and cybersecurity. So take it over, Brian.
Hey, thanks. I'm going to have to Google intrepid. I'm not sure about that word.
It's good. It's good.
All right. All right. So thanks, PETA. For everybody who doesn't know, PETA is the one that really puts all this together. So, and it's a lot of work, doing these webinars, pestering people to show up, following up, all of that. So thank you. And my name's Brian Chavis. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer for CIS. And thanks for being here. So take it, PETA, that my screen is good. All right.
Yes.
So first of all, I want to talk about our motivation. This is really important to us. In this, please don't take this as some kind of right-wing or political statement in any way whatsoever. But we believe that cybersecurity is a duty for all businesses. In fact, I have a blog coming out soon. You can watch for that, which talks about, cyber war and what's going on, comparing some of the events that we've seen to what has happened and the behaviors in Ukraine. And it's very interesting. They're very well connected. So look for that. We've got to protect our people and business continuity. And so anyway, that's our motivation. We're happy to talk to anybody about cybersecurity at no charge. So if you want to have any follow-on meetings, don't feel like it's going to be a sales call. So the agenda today, I talked about our motivation, our cybersecurity culture. We're actually certified in terms of cybersecurity ourselves. So, and then I'm going to do a short presentation. I'm going to set the security standard, which is really important. I'm going to talk about what we have as a cyber pyramid. We've used that in the past. What controls or standards that you need to have, and sort of what it takes to get there. And then in the end, of course, we're always here for questions. And also, you don't have to stick around for it, but I'm going to go through how we handle a security assessment and to see if, your people can do that or your vendor can do that. So I'll show you how we do it. So it'll give you a little background on how to move forward. All right. So the first thing that you need to do, and this needs to come from management, it's like, what security standard are we going to use? Because you can't have a goal without a standard, right? So, and it's pretty simple. And the first one that a lot of people are doing is, what do I have to do to get cyber insurance? And we've done a complete webinar on this because cyber insurance companies are getting more rigid, more formal, and they're actually, making sure that you're doing what you're saying that you're going to do. Otherwise, they'll deny your claims if you're hit. So that's the minimum, and that's where everybody needs to be. Second are industry requirements. You've all heard of things like HIPAA, or sometimes your vendors require that you do certain things. You might have a client that requires certain things of all of their vendors, and you might fall into that. So see if you have industry requirements that you need to add. And then third is obviously our government requirements. We've done seminars on these too. And so if you're doing business, especially with the Department of Defense, you need to have NIST or CMMC standards. So first thing you need to do is decide, what standard are we going to have to adhere to? So having said that, I'll move forward to our cyber pyramid.
I had a question,
Sure.
well, not really a question, just more of, I was doing some research, and 2023 now there's, what are we up to, like 5 states that have the new privacy laws that are going into effect this year. So there's, what is it, California,
Yeah.
Virginia, Connecticut, Utah, Colorado, that, there's going to be some changes happening in terms of like compliance and industry requirements that can get pretty complex.
Right, and they have hefty fines if you have a breach. So
Yeah.
like per contact information. I mean, it can get really, really expensive. Thanks, PETA,
Yeah, of course.
keeping me on track.
Yeah, always.
Okay, here's a cyber pyramid. And this is a tool that we use to kind of, set the landscape for where you need to be. So at the very bottom are the basics. These are the minimums. It's, your backup, force patching, multi-factor authentication, firewall, all that kind of stuff that you hopefully have today. Then as you move up the pyramid, you get more and more secure, and you add, advanced email security, security operations center, a lot of other protections. And I won't go through this in detail, but I'm happy to do it offline if you like. We can go through this. I actually have a questionnaire. We'll go through it, and I can send you back the results and actually the pyramid, with we use red, yellow, and green. So not in this one, obviously, but to say, if you don't have it, it's red. If you kind of have it, it's yellow. But if you're, fully compliant with it, it'll be green. So if anybody wants to go through this with me, just reach out. So the standard that we're going to do today is the simplest one. Obviously, we can't get into government standards and like what Peter was talking about in 30 or 40 minutes. So we're going to start with the top controls for cyber insurance. And if you do these, you'll be considered to be cyber effective, right? I mean, this is kind of what's driving the industry. And so, and this is kind of the minimum requirements, especially if you want insurance, and you should have insurance. So the first one is multi-factor authentication. Everybody knows what that is. Once you log in, you've got to verify through a text message or something else to make sure you're the person that you're supposed to be. VPN, most people now, especially with COVID, have implemented VPNs. Endpoint detection and response. Some people may not know what that is, but it's kind of antivirus that's proactive. So think of it as antivirus 2.0. So instead of just protecting the individual machine when it gets a virus, it shuts down that machine from the outside so that it can't get to any other machines. So that's kind of the standard today that people want. Incident response planning, I'll go through that in a second, but you've got to have a plan if you have a breach. And that includes a lot of people, right? Should include your management, your tech people, your lawyer, perhaps. So if you have an incident, you need to know who to contact and what the procedures are going to be. And if you have cyber insurance, they have good resources for that. They'll actually help you with that generally. So force patching and updates, you've got to keep your machines, your endpoints, your network gear, everything up to date. And you have to do it without asking people to do it. You can't depend on your employees to update their own machines. Zero trust is a subject all in its own, but what it really means, and it takes a while to get there, is that people only have access to what they're supposed to have access to, and that machines, endpoints, PCs, phones, whatever, only have access to what they're supposed to have. So that's a process. It takes a little while, but the insurance companies are starting to ask for that. Point in time backups, that means you have to know what point in time you're willing to risk. In other words, can you be down a day, 2 days, 2 hours, 1 minute? You need to adhere to that. And a general term on number 8 is email hygiene. And that means that you're protecting against phishing and all those kinds of things, spam, nasties coming into your network, and that you have tools in place to keep that from happening. And the final one, it's funny, it's ironic really, because it's like the least technical, the least cost, and the most effective, because most breaches come through employees, either through, their passwords being, 123, or in a lot of cases, they're clicking on a link they shouldn't. So employee education is really important, and it's fairly inexpensive. So next, I'm going to go through these in a little more detail and talk about them. So we talked about MFA. So I'm going to talk about what expertise it takes and what cost. So it doesn't take a lot of expertise to set up MFA for the most part, especially with cloud systems, because they'll have an option that you have to implement if you're an administrator. And so it's very low cost. Now, if you have a very complex network, you may have a tougher time implementing multi-factor authentication. Just depends on your environment, but most of the time, the cost and expertise is low. So VPNs, it's kind of medium. And the only reason it's medium in terms of expertise is because, you've got to really pay attention to who can have access. And also, you want it to integrate with, what we call Active Directory, which is your existing users and their security requirements. So you wouldn't want to have two different standards or systems for keeping track of the VPN people. Like, for example, if someone leaves your company, you'll take them out of your Active Directory, but you don't want to have to also remember to take them out of the VPN. That's extremely important. We had that situation where ex-employees were not removed from the VPN and had access and actually stole some money. So the cost there is medium. It may be nothing. If you have a real firewall, it's probably just a feature that you need to turn on. So it may not cost you anything. It just may be a little bit of work. Endpoint detection and response, it takes a high expertise to set that up. It's false alarms. It's like setting up a security system in your home with motion detection and you forgot you had a cat. So there are so many things that can set off alarms that it takes a while to settle it down and make sure you're not getting false positives. And the cost on this, I'm going to call it high because you're going to be adding money on a monthly basis per user. And a lot of people, if you have a lot of users, that can get expensive. Incident response, expertise is high only because you have to be somebody in the company that has some management authority. You have to come up with, who's your lawyer? What are they on retainer? In case something happens. What about your communications? If something happens, do you immediately report that to your vendors, your employees? So, I say it takes some expertise because you not only have to be technical, but you have to be somebody who understands management. That cost is medium. It's mostly the time it takes. There are a lot of templates out there that'll speed that up. But again, it's a combination of management and technical. Forced updates. The expertise on that is high because, for example, we don't automatically do updates the day they come out. We have to test them and make sure that they're not going to, mess something else up. So you need people who understand the updates and when to apply them. And also the cost on it can be high because you need a system that does that automatically. You don't want to have to go around machine to machine to install them. So you need a remote management system that allows you to push those updates out to all your users at the same time. So that can get complicated. Zero trust, I said the expertise is high. You need to know who has access to what. You have to technically understand, can they get there in some way? I mean, it's really common, for example, for a company to grow a lot and then realize that maybe an administrative person at one point in time needed access to client information that they don't need anymore because someone else has taken over that job. So zero trust, you need to be pretty smart about how you do that. The cost I put in there medium, but it varies, depending on the complexity of your information. This is where PETA's point comes in, especially because, you you can't have a breach of your customer information. So you need to really understand who has that information and can they take it. Backups, we've all done backups for years and years and years, and it takes some expertise to do it, but most people know how to do it now. And the cost varies depending on, what you need to back up, how big it is, and how fast you need to be recovered. So if you have like a 1 minute of downtime maximum, it's going to be expensive. If you can work for a day or two before the backups come back, then, it's not going to be a lot of money. So, because the system's not going to be very complex. So anyway, that varies. Email. So I talked about that, the hygiene, as we call it. Expertise is low. You can set up a filter externally. And, Microsoft has a way you can do it if you're on 365. The cost is medium. It may cost a few dollars per user, but it's extremely important and pretty easy to do. But the easiest thing to do is employee education. It doesn't take a lot of expertise to set it up. The cost is pretty low. And I'm talking about, you put in all of your users into, a web portal, and then that web portal keeps track for you. Have people watch the webinars on education, have they clicked on a fake phishing email, it'll keep track of all that for you. So it's fairly easy to implement, but it needs to probably involve HR. So there's a little bit more than technical involved there. So I talked about the tools that are needed. And I want to talk about those a little more because all of these tools have to be implemented in order to really be cyber secure. There's no way to do it without this. So let me show you. These are the primary tools that we use and that most companies use. So you have remote monitoring and management. That's so that you can touch, each machine without physically being there. And it monitors what's going on and sets alerts. Automated patching generally comes through the remote monitoring and management system, but sometimes it's a separate system as well. And for example, a lot of people use Microsoft's version of that. 24/7 operations center. And this is like, I don't know, if you have a security system in your house and something happens, your security company like ADP or whoever is alerted to deal with it. The same thing happens with endpoint detection and response. If something happens, then they are alerted and then they send a ticket to you to alert you. So the professional services automation is your ticketing system. What happens when you get an alert? Where does that alert go? Who does it go to? What does it do? And that's called instant response. So all of these things interact with each other to really protect you. So it's like a castle with, a moat and a wall and other barriers and a keep and, an army watching all the time. So you generally need all of these tools. Now, a lot of people, you can buy them separately. There are companies that sell, these things that are all integrated into one, package or one purchase. But it really doesn't matter because even if they're in one package, you still have to define all of the interactions between these things. I use the example of the cat. So until you have your false positives from your endpoint detection and response settled down, that's going to generate a lot of traffic to your operations center, which sets up tickets in your systems, which tells you how to respond, et cetera, et cetera. So all of these things have to be set up and working for a period of time. And it takes a lot of time. You'll never do this in 60 days. So I'll explain to you how you can as I go on. So next, Peter, anything you need to add?
No, I think that was pretty comprehensive. I like, how you, compare like the impact versus the cost. I like that.
Okay.
It makes it pretty simple to kind of view high level, help businesses prioritize, okay, based on that, here's what I'm going to tackle first.
Right. So I'll get to more on that. But first, I think, if you're an executive and you're figuring out how am I going to do these things, I'm just going to point out some trends in the industry that'll help you, kind of figure this out. First is the Picasso man. We've used the old Picasso guy forever. The IT management maturity model. We've had a complete webinar on that. And then we've also talked about the trend of co-managed IT, because it's very difficult for one person or two people in the company to manage everything we're talking about. And we use the example of the Picasso man. Back 10 years ago, you could have a good computer generalist who could be part CIO, IT director, admin, engineer, help desk, analyst, everything like that. But what about cybersecurity now in compliance to the standards? There's no way that one person can kind of keep track of all those things, all of those tools, all the interaction, all the response. So we just want to point out that in the old days, you could have a small staff, with general skills, but today you need very specific skills to kind of handle this. So there goes Picasso man. The second thing is the IT management maturity model. So anybody who, if you're professionally manage an IT situation, you're very aware of this standard. In fact, there's an agreement across the industry experts on what the levels of your management are when it comes to IT. And the first one, sort of everybody's there. You respond to individual user challenges and requests. So you have somebody has a problem, and then you have, a staff member that goes and helps them out. That is completely reactive, and you can't be haphazard, reactive when it comes to cybersecurity. Then a lot of times people get a little more organized and have more of a systematic approach to solving known issues and dealing with daily tasks. So they get a little better at sort of documenting what they have and what happens. If this happens, then this happens. Here's how we respond. Again, you're getting more efficient, but you're still not proactive. Once you get to be proactive and you're starting to be able to be cyber secure, that's the first step. You have to at least be proactive to where you separate the urgency from importance. And a lot of times down here, you react as an IT person to what's urgent, not to what's really important. You pay attention to the front burner, not the back burner sort of things. And the back burner things are much more important when it comes to cybersecurity. You've got to be very, very proactive, because cybersecurity is really pretty mundane. It's like you have to have a lot of expertise, and just like in any kind of security situation, there's a whole lot of downtime and a lot of menial tasks to do. Doing updates, monitoring, all those kinds of things are a bit boring, but have to be done. So, and here's where people really need to be, is where you have, we call them service level agreements, but it's where you set standards for how often things are patched, what's acceptable, what's the acceptable time to react to a user problem, what's an acceptable time to react to downtime. And so you're getting much more proactive and aligned. And then, of course, this is the optimal, and not a lot of companies can get here. Bigger companies do because they have a lot of resources, but as a small company, it's tough to get here, where you have operational excellence and everything is just perfect, and you're just making strategic decisions because you know that you got everything covered on the back end. So just notice that your risk level on this end of the spectrum is high. Your risk level over here is very low. So in the next slide, I want to show you is kind of how to get there, and how we're going to put a time chart on this to sort of, we said we would show you how to do this in two months. So here's how we do it. Okay, across the top, you've got to level up. And of course, if you work with a company like ours, you're going to level up automatically, because you're not just buying tools, you're buying processes. You're buying proven ways to deal with these things, and the ability to not have to, to purchase all of this in one package and not have to implement it or understand it. And there's a huge learning curve on these things. So the first thing we do is onboarding. The onboarding, the biggest part of that, at least initially, is documentation. We come into a lot of companies and they don't even really know what they have, how many machines they have, how many versions of Word do they have, who has software on their system that they shouldn't have. So the first thing we do is documentation, and we have automated tools for that. So we put our tools at work, and they build a complete database of everything that is there. So, it'd be really difficult to do this on your own. But we have a system that's called IT Glue that goes out and figures it all out and lets us know, builds reports. Next thing is that you've got to have the RMM system for doing patches and reacting to situations, monitoring the network. And you have to have the PSA, Professional Services Automation, which is the ticketing system, to have workflows. So that if a ticket is generated by the management system or the EDR or wherever, that ticket is prioritized and dealt with effectively. We do that through multiple boards, we call them. So a ticket goes on a particular board. It may be a help desk board, it might be a senior engineer board, it could be anything. So anyway, you have to have all of that set up. We set that up in like week 3. Then, oops, spazzy finger. We set up cloud protections and the backup. So once we know what you have, what your goals are, where you are, then we'll make sure and verify your disaster recovery risk. Once we know that, we can move forward. So now we're into month 2, and it's time to put in the EDR. So you wouldn't want to do the EDR until you have the other tools in place, because if it finds a problem, what's it going to do? It can't generate tickets. It can't generate an incident response. It can't do anything. So we have to have all these in place first, and then we set up the EDR and connect it to the Managed Security Operations Center in the cloud. So then you have engineers that are sitting boring 24/7, watching for incidents on your network, just like ADP does for your house. Okay, once we have all of this in place, it's one thing to have it in place, but it has to be managed. We call that security foundation management, and that's at the end of month 2. Once we have that in, then we know that you're going to be as cyber secure as possible, because not only are the tools in place, but we've got the security foundation management to where we understand who's responsible for updates, how those happen, who's monitoring this, who's reacting to that, and who's keeping all these tools tweaked and operational. Once we've done that, then we do the security awareness campaign. That's the education piece that I mentioned before. So then we can start educating all of our employees on what they should be doing. Then, not everybody does this. We do it on a regular basis, but once we've, settled everything down, we've got the tools in place, then we do a vulnerability security assessment. And at the end, I'll discuss that more if people want to stick around, but it doesn't make any sense to do a vulnerability assessment when you're completely vulnerable. So we do that for companies who have been hacked. And of course, we find thousands of vulnerabilities, but at least we know what they are and we know how to close up their system. Next month, we're going to do a webinar on a couple of breaches that we've had where companies have called us and said they've been breached. Their people are trying to steal money. What do we do? And so I'll go through the process of what we do for that next month. And then, once we're settled after month 3, we do strategic meetings with a CIO, our virtual CIO, to build a roadmap for what we do moving forward, budgeting. So this is the strategic part of it. And then, of course, ongoing, we like to do life cycle management, continual improvement, zero trust, revisit that. When people come and go, you got to revisit zero trust. You've got to bake it into your onboarding and offboarding with your HR department. And so those are really ongoing, continual improvements. So how'd I do on that, Peter? Oh, I didn't say, is the orange here security risk, cybersecurity risk. So you can see as you implement these things, your risk continues to go down, right?
Yeah, no, this is, again, you've been busy. You've been busy, Brian, because this is just another slide that really, I'm a visual learner, so it's just
Right.
easy to look at this and kind of make sense of, okay, this is what I can expect 30 days in, 60 days in, 3 months in. And then I think it's, important to know that you're never at zero risk. Like, that's not a thing. The goal
Right.
is to get to level 5 where you're at the, you're putting yourself in a position, or your business in a position to be at the least level of risk, putting all the things in place to keep yourself secure. But it'll never be at zero, but, you're doing everything you can to prevent Vladimir from getting in.
And respond if they do, right?
Exactly. Having a plan in place to respond if they do. Absolutely right.
So I'm kind of fake to this whole cybersecurity in 60 days. And you're probably thinking, okay, sure, they can do it, but a lot of vendors can do this. And my point is that, especially the Picasso man, the maturity model, and what needs to be done is you probably can't do it yourself. The good news, there are companies like ours who will do this for you. Generally, the cost, it's per user. So it may be less money than you think to completely buy the process, the tools, and the implementation all at one time. And the way you do this is through the next concept that we have is co-managed IT. And this Venn diagram kind of shows one way this could work. There may be a different way. We may move some of these items back and forth, but your IT team should be focused on employee training, the initial troubleshooting, supporting your business applications. We don't know your business applications. Every industry has different applications, right? Everybody's got some cloud system that's really important to their business, and you should be focused on that. Policies and procedures, those are unique to your company. You need to worry about those. Data management, we don't know exactly what's important or what data is more important than other important data is to you. What information is critical? Those are decisions you need to make and you need to worry about. Maintaining data privacy. We can put all these tools in place and tell you what's going on, but in the end, it's your responsibility. And also your online media, website, social, all the kinds of things that you do there. So that's a lot for your team to do. And what the outsourced team should focus on, as I say, is keeping the lights on and the doors locked. The things that are generic to most all businesses. And that's where we talk about the VCIO, the maturity management model. We bring that in. The enterprise security stack. I talked about that whole web kind of diagram that I did with all the tools and how they interact. 24/7 monitoring. You know, it's not like you want your people doing that. You know, it's like you don't be, if you're awakened at 3 a.m, you want to be sure it's a good reason for it. Patch management, I don't know why any company would want to take that on by themselves. We have unique tools that make that really, really efficient for us to do that. Remote remediation of issues. So from the initial troubleshooting, you can pass those over. That comes through the PSA, the ticketing system, so that you can just turn tickets over, say, look, I can't deal with this. I'm on vacation. You know, I don't know technically what to do here. So you flip those over to your outsourced team. Onboarding and offboarding employees. So, you know, you would think that maybe the IT internal team should handle that, but, you know, it's a lot more complicated than you would think. So you want to be sure that when somebody is onboarded, that they have zero trust, that they're the only way that they can get to anything is very specific, that they only have applications that have been authorized. And again, this is kind of mundane and easy for somebody to do who's outsourced, working directly with the HR department for onboarding and offboarding employees. And of course, IT vendor management, your, you know, internet provider, phone providers, all those kinds of things. I know that most internal teams do not want to sit on a 1-800 number forever dealing with, you know, somebody's cell phone or something like that, you know. So vendor management is something that you can outsource as well. So this is a PETA topic. She likes to talk about this one.
I do like to talk about co-managed IT. I like a good Venn diagram. Who doesn't?
Yeah. Okay. So I said that I would discuss how we do what we do. And so I won't go into it in too much detail, but we've got information that shows how we do things. You can use that to talk to your own people and how they should do that. And again, the benefits to that are, you know, all the things that I've been talking about. So if you want to understand how we do it, you can apply that to your own MSP or your own staff or whoever you outsource to be sure that they're doing it properly. So the key takeaways here, I think that one thing I want everybody to know is that when we do a security assessment, we always find an intruder. 100% of the time. We did 2 in the last month, I want to say, in which both companies were at risk. One company lost like many $1,000s. And another company, they kept trying to steal, I think it was $30,000. We're doing a case study on that if you want to keep in touch. But, and that was through QuickBooks Online. So, and when we go in, we often find nation actors, that the people who are penetrating are from China or Russia. So, you know, be sure that you're being breached. You may already be breached. Every time we go in, we find a breach. So anyway, I just want to emphasize that. All right, cybersecurity requires integration of tools that can take years to accomplish without a partner. So, you know, you may try to do this on your own, but you've got to, you know, figure out what products to buy. Do they integrate? How do you integrate them? You know, all the workflows and all those kinds of things. I think it's pretty hard to do without a partner, certainly in 2 or 3 months. Cybersecurity requires everyday processes that cannot be accomplished with a small staff. It's like you need a whole variety of people who are all working on different aspects of your cybersecurity. And you can't do cybersecurity without a mature IT management model. It's just, you can't be haphazard. You know, everything's got to be managed very, very tightly. Otherwise, why even do it at all? You know, you can't be lackadaisical. It's got to be perfect. And you need to have those processes in place. And the last thing is what a lot of people don't like is that you have to increase your budget. And the reason is that all those tools cost a little bit of money, and all of them cost money per endpoint, which means, per computer, server, firewall. And so, we figure that if you wanted to implement what we do with all of our tools, it's probably between like 40 to 50, depending on the complexity, to $50 and how many users you have per user. So that's kind of the budget that we're talking about for getting this done. So, and that's per month. So you're going to add monthly charges for tools, whether you do it yourself or you have someone else do it. You're going to have to buy these tools, implement the tools, and then on a regular basis, on a monthly basis, just like everything else, you're going to have, recurring fees. And like I said, I could break it down for you if you'd like. How much is EDR per unit? How much is RMM per unit? So, and we bundle those all together and give it, as one kind of thing. So that's really all I have. Like I said, I can hang around and show you how we do assessments or how we operate if anybody wants to see that. But I think, Peter, do you have any questions?
No questions. We did have a question come in. Someone was asking if we were going to send the slide deck out. So we'll make sure to get the resources out, the recording and the deck. And I will include, Brian's contact information. Obviously, it'll come over in the email, but all of Brian's contact information will be there. If anybody wants to follow up with him, he's just a great source of insight and information, if you couldn't tell from this presentation. And it's really, like you said at the beginning, it's really about just getting helpful information out there to businesses to keep them protected and minimize the risk, because these breaches are coming every day you hear about something new. And
yeah, if you want to hear some stories, I'm happy to do that. We've got two really, really good ones. And one is a small business. They only have 8 users, and they were attacked multiple times, which happens. If you're attacked once, you're going to be on a hit list to be attacked more and more and more. And the other one, like I said, was really complicated. They had the Chinese in there who had access to all their security cameras and some of their servers, and they were turning up servers in the virtual environment and reaching out. So, I've got good stories if you need to hear them or tell them to your management. And also, I'll go through this. You can have the slide deck, but if you want me to present it to your management, I'm happy to do that.
Very good. Well, thank you again for those of you who joined us. Let me go ahead and switch the recording off here. But thank you again for taking the time to join myself and Brian today. And thank you, Brian, as usual, for putting all of this information together and presenting.
Well, I couldn't do it without you guys. Peter, Candace, your cohort, was great in getting. I could never do a slide deck like this, I can tell you that. So